The headlights carved through the October darkness as Marcus Thorne pulled his 18-wheeler. Into the cracked asphalt of Millfield Rest Stop, the place had been officially closed for 3 years. But truckers still used it when the next legal stop was 50 miles of winding mountain road away. Marcus killed the engine and sat in the sudden silence, feeling every one of his 47 years in his aching shoulders. He'd been driving for 30 hours straight, pushing legal limits in his own endurance. The cargo manifest said medical. Supplies bound for Denver, but the sealed trailer and the cash payment made him suspect otherwise. These days, a man didn't ask too many questions when the money was real, and the job kept food on his table. The wind howled through the skeletal remains of the rest area's covered pavilion as Marcus climbed down from the cab. Broken picnic tables lay scattered like bones, and graffiti covered every vertical surface. He grabbed his flashlight and headed for the restroom building, hoping the plumbing still worked. The beam of his light swept across shattered windows and rusted door frames. Most of the building was a ruin, but one section still had an intact roof. As he approached, a sound stopped him, cold as soft, rhythmic sobbing that definitely wasn't the wind. Marcus had learned caution in his years on the road. He'd seen enough desperate people in dark places to know that kindness could get you killed. But something about the sound tugged at him, a vulnerability that seemed genuine rather than predatory. "Hello?" he called softly, keeping his distance. "Someone in there?" The sobbing stopped immediately. Silence stretched for long seconds before a voice answered, female, young, but with an odd accent he couldn't place. "Please, don't call them. I'm not supposed to be here." Marcus stepped closer, his flashlight revealing a huddled figure in the corner of what had once been the women's restroom. She was small, maybe 5'3", wrapped in what looked like a torn metallic blanket. Her skin had a strange pale quality, almost luminescent in the harsh lead beam. "Call who?" Marcus asked, but as his light fully illuminated her face, the words died in his throat. Her eyes were too large, too bright, reflecting light like an animal's. Her features were delicate but wrong somehow, as if someone had tried to sculpt a human face from memory and gotten the proportions slightly off. When she raised her hand to shield herself from the light, he saw that her fingers were longer than they should be, ending in what might have been claws or simply very sharp nails. "Please," she whispered again, and despite her alien features, the desperation in her voice was utterly human. "They're hunting me. If they find me here, they'll take me back to the ship." Marcus stood frozen, his practical mind warring with the evidence of his eyes, while somewhere in the distance, the sound of approaching vehicles began to grow louder. Dr. Helena Cross hadn't expected visitors at her remote cabin, especially not a grizzled trucker. Carrying what appeared to be an unconscious young woman wrapped in a space blanket. But after Marcus Thorne explained what he'd found and more, importantly, what he'd seen, Helena's scientific curiosity overrode her instinct for self-preservation. "Set her on the examination table," Helena instructed, clearing away the scattered papers and equipment that had accumulated during her exile. From mainstream academia, the cabin's converted laboratory was cramped but functional, equipped with instruments she'd salvaged from her former research facility before the university had quietly forced her. Resignation to Helena had been studying theoretical xenobiology for 15 years. Before her controversial papers on potential extraterrestrial contact protocols had made her colleagues uncomfortable. Too imaginative, they'd said. Too willing to consider possibilities that serious scientists shouldn't entertain. Now staring at the unconscious being on her table, she felt a bitter vindication. The creature, she had to think of her as a creature until she knew more, was clearly humanoid, but distinctly other. Her bone structure was finer than a human's. Her skin had that strange luminescent quality Marcus had described. Her hair was an impossible shade of silver that seemed to shift color in different light. Most remarkably, she was breathing, her chest rising and falling in a rhythm slightly faster than human normal. "She spoke to you?" Helena asked, pulling on latex gloves. "Clear as day," Marcus confirmed. "Said they were hunting her. Said something about a ship." Helena began her examination carefully, documenting everything with her camera. The being's vital signs were stable, but alien body temperature several degrees below human normal. Pulse rate elevated, blood pressure readings that didn't match any terrestrial baseline. When Helena drew a small blood sample, the liquid had a faint blue tinge. "Remarkable," she whispered, preparing a slide for microscopic examination. "The cellular structure it's like nothing I've ever seen. Similar to human cells, but with additional organelles I can't identify." As if responding to Helena's voice, the being's eyes fluttered open. They were indeed larger than human eyes, a deep violet color that seemed to contain flecks of starlight. She sat up slowly, her movements graceful despite obvious exhaustion. "Where, double quotes, she began, then stopped, studying Helena's face. "You are a healer? A scientist?" Helena replied gently. "My name is Helena. You're safe here." The being's expression grew wary. "Safe is temporary. They have tracking methods you cannot. Imagine, I should not have stayed in one place so long." "Who's tracking you?" Helena asked, setting down her instruments to appear less threatening. "My own kind," the being replied, her voice carrying centuries of sadness, despite her apparently youthful appearance. "I am Vera of the 7th constellation. What you might call a refugee." Helena's pulse quickened. First contact actual. Documented first contact was happening in her ramshackle laboratory. Refugee from what? Vera's hands moved to a metallic collar around her neck, nearly invisible against her pale skin. "From a binding I did not choose, from a fate determined by others. Your people have a word, ... slavery." The word hung in the air, like a physical presence. Helena felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. This wasn't just a scientific discovery, this was a person asking for help. "The collar," Helena said carefully. "Is that how they track you?" Vera nodded. "It transmits my location, my vital signs, even my emotional state. But it is also a leash, if they activate it." She shuddered. Helena looked at Marcus, seeing her own determination reflected in his weathered face. They were just two humans with limited resources, but they were all Vera had. "Then we need to get it off you," Helena said simply. "And we need to do it before they find us." Agent Vincent Kane studied the satellite imagery on his tablet, his pale blue eyes tracking heat signatures across the mountainous terrain. 3 days of searching, and they were finally closing in. The target's biosignature had been erratic sometimes. Strong, sometimes completely absent, but the general trajectory was clear. She was heading north, staying off major highways, probably moving at night. "Double quotes, sir? We've got something." Agent Rivera approached with a field report in hand. Local sheriff's department found an abandoned truck at the Millfield rest stop. Registration. Traces back to Marcus Thorne, independent contractor. No sign of the driver, but there were unusual trace elements in the soil. Kane took the report, scanning the details with practiced efficiency. 30 years with the Department of Extraterrestrial Affairs had taught him to recognize patterns others missed. The trace elements matched the subject's biochemistry. She'd been there. And recently, timeline, Kane asked. Already formulating pursuit vectors. 12 hours, maybe less. And sir, there's something else. We ran a background check on the trucker. He's got no family, no permanent address, perfect candidate for recruitment or elimination. But get this, his route took him past Dr. Helena Cross's property. Kane's jaw tightened. Helena Crosta, xenobiologist who'd been quietly blacklisted 5 years ago for his speculative research into alien contact scenarios. Of course, the subject would gravitate towards someone who might understand her nature. Cross was always too curious for her own good, Kane muttered, remembering the academic conferences where she'd pushed boundaries other scientists wouldn't approach. How far is her cabin? 23 miles north of the rest stop. Remote location, minimal surveillance coverage. Kane gathered his team with sharp gestures. 6 agents, all veterans of containment operations, all bound by security clearances. That made their own families strangers to their real work. They'd been tracking subject. 47, the designation they'd given her since she'd escaped from the research facility in Nevada. 2 weeks ago, the official story would be that she was a dangerous bioweapon, a genetically modified human who'd gone rogue. The truth was classified at levels so high, that Kane himself only knew fragments. She was one of several beings recovered from a crash site in 2019, the sole survivor of what appeared to be an escape pod. For 3 years, they'd studied her, learned from her, promised her eventual freedom, while never having any intention of providing it. Her escape had been an embarrassingly simpler moment of compassion from a low-level technician, a power fluctuation that temporarily disabled her restraints. She'd simply walked out through ventilation systems no human could have navigated. "Listen up," Kane addressed his team as they loaded into the black SUVs. "Subject is highly intelligent and possibly telepathic. She's been exposed to our technology and protocols. Do not underestimate her. Authorized weapons are tranquilizer rounds. Only the project directors want her intact." As they drove through the winding mountain roads, Kane reflected on the irony of the situation. They'd spent years trying to understand her species, their technology, their intentions. They'd learned that her people were fleeing something, a war, a catastrophe. He'd never been given the full picture. But instead of offering sanctuary, the government had chosen exploitation. Kane had followed orders as he always did. But lately, the orders had become harder to stomach. He'd heard her call herself in the recordings had never shown aggression toward her captors. She'd answered questions, shared knowledge, even seemed to develop attachments to some of the researchers. Her escape hadn't been violent. She'd simply seized an opportunity to reclaim her freedom. "ETA 5 minutes, Rivera announced from the driver's seat. Kane checked his weapon one final time, loaded with enough tranquilizer to drop a horse. He told himself it was necessary, that the knowledge they could gain from her was worth the moral compromise. But as they crested the final hill and saw smoke rising from Dr. Cross's chimney, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were the real monsters in this story. The cabin came into view, isolated and vulnerable, and Kane gave the signal to surround it. Nyashi had finally shared her true name with Helena, and Marcus stood at the cabin's window, watching the black vehicles position themselves like predators circling wounded prey. Her enhanced senses had detected their approach long before. Human ears could hear the engines, giving them precious minutes to prepare. "There are 6 of them," she said, her voice eerily calm despite the terror Marcus could see in her luminous eyes. "They're armed with weapons designed specifically for my physiology." Helena frantically packed her research notes and blood samples into a waterproof case. "The back trail leads to the old mining road. If we can reach Marcus's truck, no." Naya turned from the window, her alien features set with grim determination. "They have thermal imaging, scent tracking technology, adapted from my own people's methods. You cannot outrun them while carrying me." Marcus checked the hunting rifle he'd retrieved from Helena's closet, woefully inadequate against government agents. But it was what they had. "So what do you suggest? We just hand you over." Naya's fingers traced the metallic collar at her throat. And for the first time since her arrival, she smiled, the expression both beautiful and heartbreaking on her otherworldly features. "There is a third option, but it requires sacrifice." An amplified voice echoed across the clearing. "Dr. Cross, Marcus Thorne, we know you're harboring the escaped subject. Surrender her peacefully, and no charges will be filed against you." "They lie," Naya said simply. "Humans who have seen me, who know the truth, they do not leave witnesses." Helena's face paled, but her voice remained steady. "Then what's this?" "Third option." Naya's hands went to her collar again, this time finding a hidden mechanism Helena's instruments had missed. "This device does more than track me. It contains a neural interface designed to suppress my natural abilities. But if I overload it, you'll die," Marcus said, reading the implication in her expression. "Perhaps, or perhaps I will remember what I truly am." Naya's eyes began to glow brighter, and the air around her seemed to shimmer. "My people called me Naya the Dreamweaver. Before I was taken, I can touch minds, reshape perceptions, make them see what I choose them to see." The cabin's front door splintered as agents prepared to breach. Helena grabbed Naya's hands, feeling the strange coolness of her skin. "There has to be another way." "There is always another way," Naya agreed, "but this is the only way that saves you both." She pressed something into Helena's palm, a small crystalline device that pulsed with inner light. my people's memory. Core. Everything we've learned about the cosmos, about life itself. Use it wisely. The neural interface at her throat began to spark and smoke as Naya overrode its safety systems. Her form wavered, becoming translucent. And suddenly, Marcus could sense something vast and ancient awakening behind her violet eyes. "Vincent Kane," she called out, her voice now carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate in their bones. "I know. You can hear me. You've studied me long enough to understand my vocal range." Outside, the assault preparations halted. "I offer you a bargain," Naya continued, her form stabilizing as power flowed through her. "Let these innocents go, and I will return with you willingly." "But no, I am no longer the broken creature you held captive. Push me too far, and you'll discover what your people truly found in that crashed ship." Marcus felt a strange tingling in his mind, images flickering at the edge of his consciousness, vast ships sailing between stars, beings of impossible beauty and power, and something dark pursuing them across the galaxy. Through the window, he saw Agent Kane gesture for his team to lower their weapons. "I am Naya, daughter of the void between stars," she said, stepping toward the door, "and I choose to end this pursuit on my own terms." The collar around her throat crumbled to dust as her true power awakened, and Marcus understood that everything was about to change. Father Gabriel Santos had seen many desperate souls seek sanctuary in St. Catherine's Chapel over his 40 years of service, but none quite like the silver-haired woman who appeared at his door on a cold November morning. She moved with an otherworldly grace, and her eyes held depths that spoke of stars and suffering. "Father," she said, her voice carrying accents from no earthly nation, "I need sanctuary, and I believe you are a man who honors the ancient laws of refuge." Gabriel had heard whispers in recent weeks, stories from the mountain communities about government vehicles and mysterious searches, rumors of something extraordinary hidden in the wilderness. Looking at this strange, luminous woman, he began to understand that those whispers had been true. "All who seek God's protection are welcome," he replied, stepping aside to let her enter. "What is your name, child?" "I am Naya," she said simply, "and I'm very far from home." Over the following days, Gabriel learned the truth in fragments. Naya spoke carefully, aware that knowledge itself could be dangerous. But she trusted something in the old priest's weathered face. She told him of her world among the stars, of the great exodus that had brought her people to Earth as refugees, and of the government facility where she had been studied like a laboratory specimen. "They think they saved me from my pursuers," she explained as they walked through the chapel's modest gardens. "But Vincent Kane and his people, they have become the very thing they claimed to protect me from." Gabriel had contacted old friends, priests in other dioceses, who had connections to underground networks that helped refugees and political dissidents. The Catholic Church had centuries of experience in moving people who needed to disappear, and Gabriel was prepared to use every resource at his disposal. "There's a cargo ship leaving Seattle next week," Father Miguel reported over an encrypted satellite phone. "The captain owes the church a favor. They won't ask questions about passengers who need to travel without documentation." But Naya shook her head when Gabriel presented the plan. "I cannot simply run forever, Father. My people, the survivors, they need to know what happened here. And humans, ... they need to know what's coming." It was then that Dr. Helena Cross and Marcus Thorne arrived at the chapel, carrying research data and a crystalline memory device that pulsed with alien knowledge. Their reunion with Naya was brief but emotional, and Gabriel watched as these three unlikely allies planned something far more ambitious than mere escape. "The data we've compiled," Helena explained, "it proves that Earth has been contacted by multiple species. Some seeking refuge, others ... less benevolent. The government's secrecy isn't protecting humanity, it's leaving us defenseless." "We make it public," Marcus said. "Every news outlet, every social media platform, make it impossible to suppress." Gabriel listened as they outlined their plan. Naya would use her abilities to transmit her testimony directly to news networks worldwide, bypassing government censorship. Helena's scientific data would provide credibility. Marcus would coordinate the distribution using his trucking network Ordinary. people with access to technology and an inherent distrust of authority. And what of you, Father? Naya asked. This will bring great scrutiny to your church. Gabriel smiled, thinking of the vows he had taken decades ago, the promise to serve truth and protect the vulnerable. The church has weathered storms before. Besides, if we're about to meet our cosmic neighbors, perhaps it's time for some new theological discussions. The broadcast went live on a Tuesday morning, transmitted simultaneously across dozens of platforms. Naya's testimony was compelling and undeniable, her alien nature impossible to fake or dismiss. Helena's scientific analysis provided context. Marcus's network ensured that copies spread faster than any government agency could suppress them. Within hours, the story had gone global. Other whistleblowers emerged, sharing similar accounts. Government facilities were exposed. The age of cosmic secrecy was ending. Agent Vincent Kane arrived at the chapel that evening, but he came alone and unarmed. Gabriel met him at the door, noting the exhaustion and resignation in the man's pale eyes. "She's gone, isn't she?" Kane asked. Gabriel nodded toward the sky, where a faint star seemed to pulse with unusual brightness. Her people came for her. Last night, but her message remains. Kane stared upward for a long moment. "Do you think we'll be ready for what comes next?" "Faith, Agent Kane, is believing we can be better than we are. And sometimes," Gabriel added, thinking of the silver-haired woman who had brought starlight to his humble chapel, "sometimes we're given the chance to prove it." In the distance, the star pulsed once more and faded, carrying Naya home to the void between stars, leaving behind a world forever changed by her courage to trust in the goodness of strangers.